On a broadcast tonight, at a nationally televised debate, President Park Geun-hye demonstrates her commitment for sweeping deregulation to boost economy. The U.S. Fed says it's time to taper, further scaling back the stimulus package. The news sent major markets in the red. Plus, a new lead in the search for the missing Malaysian airliner. Australia says it found possible pieces of debris in the Indian Ocean. With these stories and more next on Primetime News. Good evening to our viewers in Korea, and hello to those of you who are watching from around the world. It's Thursday, March 20th here in Seoul. I'm Yoo Ji-hye.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thanks so much for joining us. We begin this evening with President Park Geun-hye's aggressive campaign for deregulation to unleash growth. In a rare live televised debate, the Korean leader stressed that cutting down on red tape is the best way to revitalize Korea's economy and create jobs. Our presidential office correspondent Choi You-sun reports.
저는 규제 개혁이야말로 경제 혁신과 대도약에 있어 돈 들이지 않고도 할 수 있는 유일한 핵심 열쇠이자 각계각층의 경제 주체들이 자유롭게 도전할 수 있는 환경을 조성하고 용기를 북돋울 수 있는 기반이라고 생각하고 있습니다.
At a special televised debate on deregulation Thursday, President Park highlighted how sweeping regulatory reforms would encourage businesses to innovate and actively invest, ultimately leading to job creation. As an example of unnecessary red tape, the president talked about how overseas fans of Korean dramas are not able to purchase the products they see on their screens. That's because they don't have the electronic identification certification required for online transactions in Korea. The president then called for government employees to be more proactive in regulatory reforms, proposing an evaluation system where they would be rewarded for their deregulation initiatives. She also asked for a balance between easing unnecessary regulations and boosting ones that are required in areas of welfare, the environment, and personal information protection. Some 60 business representatives from conglomerates to small and mid-sized firms also voiced their opinions. They said a regulation is often controlled by more than one ministry, which hampers new business projects that could revitalize the economy. The business leaders said there should be a system in place where ministries communicate more effectively. Also on Thursday, the government pledged to cut the volume of registered regulations to 80% of the current level by 2016. And next year, the government will adopt Britain's control system, which automatically eliminates existing regulations when new ones are introduced to ensure there's no extra cost to the public and businesses. Choi You-sun, Arirang News.
The presidents of South Korea and China will hold bilateral talks on the sidelines of the Nuclear Security Summit at The Hague next week.
Beijing's foreign ministry spokesperson said Thursday that Chinese President Xi Jinping will sit down with his Korean counterpart Park Geun-hye and will also hold other one-on-ones with the leaders of the U.S., Kazakhstan, Finland, and the U.K. It will be the third bilateral summit between Presidents Park and Xi since last June. And speaking of resuming stalled dialogue, North Korea and Japan have agreed to restart their government talks.
At a press conference, an official from Japan's foreign ministry told reporters the two governments had come to an agreement on holding formal bilateral meetings, but not much else. The decision came Thursday after a two-day informal meeting between Red Cross and government officials from both countries. Pundits say the talks will likely center on repatriating the remains of Japanese nationals who died in North Korea during World War II. They'll be the first government-level discussions between North Korea and Japan since 2012, when talks were scrapped after Pyongyang launched a long-range rocket.
Janet Yellen in her first Federal Open Market Committee meeting as the chief of the U.S. Federal Reserve announced an expected cut to the bond tapering stimulus program, but her hint that an interest rate increase that may start next year sent markets into the red. Our Hwang Ji-hye has more.
U.S. Federal Reserve officials have made another $10 billion reduction in their bond buying stimulus program as widely expected. After her first monetary policy meeting as Fed Chair Janet Yellen said Wednesday that the economy is strong enough to support continued improvement in the labor market. The program was at $85 billion a month in December, and the fresh cut will take it to $55 billion. While Yellen said that the central bank expects to keep interest rates near zero for a considerable time after the bond buying program ends this fall, she hinted that it could start raising rates next spring.
The language that we use in this statement is considerable period. This is the kind of term it's hard to define, but, probably means something on the order of around 6 months or that type of thing.
The Fed tried, however, to set the market at ease, saying it would look at a wide range of economic indicators to make a judgment on the economy's readiness for higher rates. It also said that it would no longer link its future decision to increase rates to the unemployment rate, as the jobless rate has fallen faster than expected. Despite the assurance, financial markets reacted swiftly to her comments, with U.S. stocks and government bonds falling. Market analysts say that the Fed's fresh forecasts show a shift to a more hawkish policy stance than what they had been seeing just a few months ago. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
And according to Korea's finance ministry, that stimulus tapering in the United States will have little to no effect on the Korean economy. Seoul officials said Thursday that they would continue to monitor the markets closely in the event of temporary volatility from the announcement, especially with sluggish growth in the Chinese economy and the crisis in Crimea. The benchmark Kospi fell nearly 1% on Thursday to close out at 1919.
A nationwide doctor strike initially planned for next week won't take place after all. The Korean Medical Association said Thursday it was calling off the plan and accepting a tentative agreement reached with the government on contentious medical policies. The announcement followed a poll of 41,000 KMA doctors in which 62% voted to accept the deal. It includes a plan to carry out a trial run of a controversial telemedicine system and allow hospitals to build for-profit subsidiaries. The planned 6-day strike was to start next Monday and followed a one-day doctor strike earlier this month. Now take a peek into classrooms and you will find a popularity of the Korean language is spreading around the globe. In fact, tens of thousands of students overseas are now selecting Korean as their second language. Our Kim Hyun-bin delves into what's behind the Korean language boom.
The Ministry of Education has been taking the initiative to spread the Korean language around the globe, and it launched a 5-year plan to promote it in 2011. The goal was to enhance Korea's global status. For the Korean government, it was also a chance to find overseas talent. As a result, tens of thousands of elementary to middle school students in 24 countries are choosing Korean as their second language. What triggered the boom?
The Korean wave played a big part in the fact Korea became well off. Students watch Korean dramas and listen to K-pop, and they want to speak Korean. The point is, Korea's dynamic culture has influenced young people abroad.
By the end of 2011, there were a total of 695 Korean language classes in elementary and middle schools in 22 countries. By the end of 2013, that number jumped to 882 classes in 24 countries. In Asia alone, over 41,000 students and 476 schools were offering Korean in their curriculum. Classes were open in England, Bulgaria, and other countries for the first time in late 2013. So is the booming interest in the Korean language here to stay?
As we provide the Korean language, we need to make an effort to learn their culture, and the Korean wave will continue to be successful, and more foreigners will show their love and appreciation for it.
The Ministry of Education says it is working to expand the Korean language program to 1,000 classes in 28 countries by the end of this year. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
A possible breakthrough in the search for Malaysia Airlines Flight 370. Large objects found in the Indian Ocean are thought to be possible debris from the missing plane.
Search crews are currently in the area but are having a hard time locating the objects due to poor visibility amid rain and clouds. Our Connie Lee has more.
It's a new lead in the hunt for missing Malaysia Airlines Flight 370. Australian authorities say that two objects spotted in the southern Indian Ocean on Thursday could be related to the missing airliner.
Following specialist analysis of this satellite imagery, two possible objects related to the search have been identified.
According to satellite images, the objects were found about 2,300 kilometers away from Australia's city of Perth in the Indian Ocean.
And we must keep this in mind. The task of locating these objects will be extremely difficult, and it may turn out that they are not related to the search for flight MH370.
To confirm the objects, 4 military planes have been dispatched to the area, along with 6 Malaysian Navy ships and 3 helicopters. The objects are reportedly large in size, with the largest being about 24 meters long.
Every lead is a hope, and we have been very consistent. We want to verify, we want to corroborate. We're in the process of verifying and corroborating the information.
The Boeing 777 went missing in the early hours of March 8th, and the families of the Chinese passengers on that plane have been waiting now for nearly 2 weeks for answers. Their impatience and anger are growing.
I'm telling you, from 1 o'clock to 8 o'clock, you all knew where that plane was. Now you also know where it is. You're cheating us family members.
The Malaysian airliner, with 239 people on board, was headed to Beijing from Malaysia when it disappeared. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
The foreign experts' take on the hunt for the missing Malaysian airliner. We bring in Dr. John An, professor of aerospace engineering at Sejong University in Seoul. Now, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
So, Professor An, in this day and age of technology, how do we lose a plane with 239 people and their cell phones on board? What are the limits of technology in this case?
Okay, most modern airplanes like Boeing 777 are equipped with some kind of automatic tracking systems called ACARS in short, automatic communications, addressing report systems and reporting systems, and that automatically broadcast its current location, current operating conditions, and also engine data, and then reporting I'm healthy, signaling that I'm on the route, things like that. But the problem is that the pilot or somebody else who has some experience with the aircraft can turn off all those tracking devices manually.
Well, each day there seems to be a new theory as to what really happened to the missing plane. And some say it's a technical or a human error. Some are saying this is an intentional, deliberate act. What is your take?
Okay, from the fact that the aircraft first diverted from its original path and then it climbed and then dived to evade the radar, then it's definitely sure that I'm definitely sure that the airplane has been deliberately flown to evade the radar system and then apart from its original path. Basically, it might be the person might be hijacker or the pilot himself.
So if the pilot did indeed turn off all of the automatic tracking systems, what technology do we have left to be able to trace this plane? When they say that many nations are covering an expanded search area, what are they using to try to find a plane?
Okay, in those areas, if the aircraft had flown on its original path, there are many countries neighboring, that is Vietnam and then China and Malaysia, and that they operate military equipment right over there. So there's no way that they could not see that airplane flying on that path. But the problem is when the aircraft has evaded the radar signals and then flew very low along its path to Indian Ocean, then nobody could see the aircraft on the radar screen. And then also the problem is those military data is not interchanged between nations promptly. So many nations hide what they could see.
How about mobile phones of passengers on the plane? Do you think they'll be able to catch any signal or track them down?
Yeah, with the limited transmission power from the cell phone, the range might be at most around 10 miles, that's it. So when they are flying along the Indian Ocean, there's no civilian or military activity around the area.
Professor, before we let you go, could the Malaysian authorities have done things better?
Oh, yeah, definitely. When the airplane disappeared, the Malaysian government focused on the possibility of being hijacked or being attacked by a terrorist. So interested countries like China, which has 153 passengers aboard, focused their search and rescue missions, their efforts on the original path. And then that initial hours are really important because it could save lots of time, lots of lives. And the problem is the Malaysian government hid the fact that the aircraft has diverted from its original path very sharply from the start.
All right, Dr. Ahn, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insights tonight.
Thank you.
Let's get the latest on the top stories on the global front. From the latest on the crisis in Ukraine to $1 billion fine against Toyota and the U.S., we go live for Paul Lee at the News Center.
Paul, the Ukrainian government says it's planning a withdrawal from the Crimea Peninsula. What steps are they taking right now?
The Ukrainian government is making preparations to evacuate troops and their families from Crimea after more Ukrainian bases were taken over by Russian forces on Wednesday. Western leaders, meanwhile, say they will slap even more sanctions on Russia if Moscow doesn't back down. Our Shin Se-min has the details.
It does not appear that the Ukrainian military will be taking a stand in Crimea. The head of Ukraine's National Security and Defense Council said Wednesday that plans were in motion to relocate 25,000 service personnel and families from the Crimean Peninsula. The announcement came after pro-Russian forces stormed 2 naval bases in Crimea on Wednesday night and raised a Russian flag. They are the latest in a series of takeovers by Russian troops and local self-defense forces. The attacks on the bases in Crimea come as the United States and Europe seek ways to increase pressure on Russia. Speaking from the former Soviet Republic of Lithuania Wednesday, U.S. Vice President Joe Biden declared that the U.S. was absolutely committed to defending its allies.
I want to make it clear. We stand resolutely with our Baltic allies in support of the Ukrainian people and against Russian aggression. As long as Russia continues on this dark path, they will face increasing political and economic isolation.
The Obama administration and its allies says they're working to devise new and tougher economic penalties to stop Russian President Vladimir Putin from moving forces further into Ukraine's eastern territory. UN Secretary General Pan Ki-moon is scheduled to meet with Putin in Moscow on Thursday to talk about the unfolding diplomatic crisis. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Turning now to unrest in Taiwan, where hundreds of demonstrators stormed parliament on Tuesday night in protest of a trade deal with China. 3 days in, the large group of mainly university students and activists is still occupying the main parliamentary chamber after barricading themselves inside. Taipei's police tried to take back the building Wednesday, but were unsuccessful, leaving 38 officers injured. At the center of the conflict is a trade agreement that the protesters say would hurt Taiwan's economy and leave the country vulnerable to pressure from Beijing. China is Taiwan's biggest trading partner, and the trade pact is meant to open up each other's services market across 80 industries. The protesters say they will take further action unless President Ma Ying-jeou responds to their demands by Friday. Shifting gears now to the billion-dollar settlement between the U.S. Justice Department and Japanese automaker Toyota. The agreement comes after a 4-year investigation by U.S. regulators. The fine represents the largest criminal penalty imposed on a car company in U.S. history. Toyota had recalled more than 10 million cars from 2009 due to problems with their brakes, accelerator pedals, and floor mats. U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder said that Toyota had misled the public, government regulators, and Congress to conceal known safety issues. Holder said that in addition to paying the $1.2 billion penalty, Toyota will have to fully admit wrongdoing in the criminal case. Toyota President and CEO Akio Toyoda said Thursday that he could not comment on the money paid to resolve the criminal probe, but said the recalls were good for the industry in the long run. That wraps up our look at international stories making headlines around the world. I'll see you back here tomorrow night.
Hello and welcome to Primetime Sports. I'm Stephen Che. The UEFA Champions League now heads to the quarterfinals with the latest knockout phase having wrapped up. And on this last day, Manchester United and Dortmund were the last team standing. Now, Man U came into the match down 2-0 in aggregates and needed nothing short of a miracle to advance past a determined Olympiacos squad. Well, that miracle came as Dutchman Robin van Persie scored a hat-trick that put the Reds over the top and into the quarters. Meanwhile, Dortmund lost the second leg match up to Zenit 2-1, but goes through to the next round on 5-4 aggregates. Well, the Champions League quarterfinals draw will be held on Friday with the first matches set for April 1st and 2nd. And heading to the greens, slow play in golf is a major issue. In the PGA, Kevin Na has been a usual suspect, but it's a problem for every level of the sport. The pros hate it, and there are rules on every tour to keep the pace up, but their efforts have left much to be desired. Well, the KLPGA has taken notice and is taking a step further. Starting this season, they'll enact a 3-out rule where a player is given 3 warnings before being disqualified from play. And you can bet that other tours will keep an eye on how smoothly things will go. And moving to the majors, Cincinnati Reds closer Aroldis Chapman was hospitalized after being drilled in the face by a line drive in a preseason game against the Kansas City Royals. He sustained fractures to his nose and left eye and will be kept in the hospital overnight for observation. And staying with the MLB, the LA Dodgers and Arizona Diamondbacks are in Australia for their season opening series. But before they get to that, they have to take on Australia's best. The Dodgers were first up, and they were down 2-0 until Yasiel Puig's 2-run homer in the 7th tied it all up. Well, they eventually won 4-2. Well, the Diamondbacks will get their turn against Australia on Friday before opening day on Saturday. Now let's get to playoff action in the KBL. It's the series deciding Game 5 between the ET Land Elephants and the KT Sonic Boom. ET Land tries to get ahead at home, but KT breaks away. It's 39-22 at the half. Now KT continues their drive behind Juan Patillo, and ET Land just can't find the rhythm. Patillo ends with a game-high 22, and KT wins 79-57, advancing to the semis where they'll face the LG Sakers. And that's all I have for now. This has been Stephen Che. I'll see you back here later for more from the world of sports.
Our Thursday morning here in the capital got off to a cloudy start, and those clouds have since turned to rain.
For more, let's connect live to our Kim Bo-kyung standing by at the Weather Center, that is. Bo-kyung, how much rain will we get?
Good evening, guys. It has now stopped raining here in Seoul, but make sure to grab an umbrella on your ways out because the nationwide showers could continue through later tonight. The showers may be accompanied by strong winds and thunder. Most parts of the central regions will get less than 5 millimeters of precipitation. And in Gangwon-do and Dokdo and Ulung Islands, it'll be about 5 to 10 millimeters. It's looking more like winter over on the mountains of Gangwon-do province, where a heavy snowfall watch has been issued and up to 7 centimeters are forecast there. Taking a look at the current conditions, as you can see, we're seeing cloudy skies across the map due to a low pressure front. After the snow and showers, Friday looks to be a clear day, but temperatures will drop overnight as a cold wind moves down south. So but be careful not to catch a cold. Taking a look at tomorrow's readings, Seoul's morning low drops to 1 degrees with a high of 12, while Daegu and Busan reach the mid-teens. Moving on to other regions, Daejeon and Jeju make it to the low teens, while Dokdo tops out at 6. Well, that's all the updates for now, but I'll be back with more after midnight.
Thanks, Po-kyung. And that's our broadcast on this Thursday night. I'm Yoo Ji-hye in Seoul.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.